I'd like to call this meeting of the Clay County Commission to order. We will begin with our invocation. Mr. Administrator, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Pray with me. Father, we're grateful for your presence in our lives, and we ask your blessings on this meeting as we gather. We ask that you be with us as we deliberate and be with us as we adjourn. We ask this all in Jesus' blessed name. Amen.
Please stand for the pledge. Thank you. Please call the roll. Here.
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 That brings us to approval of the agenda. Is there a motion related to approval of today's agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
Motion has been made to approve the agenda as printed. Discussion. Are there any questions, any additions or deletions from today's agenda?
Not for me, thank you.
Seeing none, Commissioner Thompson, you are recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes.
That brings us to meeting schedule. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, the next scheduled meeting of the commission will be an executive session, which will take place immediately following this meeting. And then further down the road, the next commission business session will take place on Wednesday, October the 27th at 6 p.m.
Thank you very much. That brings us to honorary resolutions. There are none listed on today's agenda. There are no discussion items. Public hearings, there are none listed. There is no consent agenda item listed in today's agenda. That brings us to regular agenda. The first one on our regular agenda is 2021 Ordinance 24. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, the ordinance 2021-42 is to reappropriate and revise the adopted budget for the current year. This is a request from the Sheriff's Department, and Captain Agdarian is here to make additional comments.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. This request, in working with the Auditor's Office, is to assign funding for personnel that were approved with the Commission approval of the Dedicated Driving Impairment Grant from MoDOT. Because that grant runs from October to, doing the math, end of September, part of the funding for those personnel they're already in place. The grant was active as of October 1st. The personnel are in place, and we just need to reappropriate the 279, some of the 279 budget to cover the funding of those personnel for the remaining 5 pay periods of this year.
Very good.
All right.
Are there any questions of the captain from the commission? Very good. Is there an inclination of the commission to put this on regular or consent for next week? Anybody have a preference?
I do not.
I think since we're talking about, even though it's, I think regular might be a good place to put that, if that's good with everybody.
Very good, thank you.
That brings us to 2021-298. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-298 is a request to approve an agreement to the Commission on accreditation for law enforcement agencies. This is another request from the Sheriff's Department, and Captain Agdarian will make additional comments.
Please proceed.
Okay. Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. This request is for Commission approval of a contract between the Sheriff's Office and CALEA, which is an international accreditation agency for law enforcement. We're going to be discussing another resolution momentarily, but this one, if you'll think of it as, this request for a contract with CALEA encompasses the entire Sheriff's Office. And what this does is it will allow us to work with this agency to standardize our forms, our internal processes, our procedures, our policies, all of that. And it gives us some protection against liability because we are adhering to an internationally recognized set of standards for the operation of a law enforcement agency.
Is this the first time that we've had this association, or is this an ongoing relationship?
This is the first time, and I'm smiling because since 2000, well, prior to my current position, I was the training coordinator, and I have been trying off and on since 2009 to get this process off the ground. And so I am so pleased to see the people who are making this happen now, having gotten this process started. So I have with me Captain John Teal from the Professional Standards Division and Sergeant Chad Wilderdijk, who is now the training coordinator in the Professional Standards Division, and this is going to fall squarely on their shoulders to implement this agreement, and I'm super excited about it.
Well, since it's something you've been working on, and it's not something I'm familiar with, can you just give us, and I don't want to get too exhaustive unless someone has questions, but if you can give just a little taste of what the organization is about and in what areas it would be impacting our sheriff's deputies.
Captain John Teal, Professional Standards Division, Sheriff's Office. The CALEA is the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement, and what that does is bring all our policies and procedures into line with area agencies and actually nationwide and worldwide. And what that will do is help limit our liability on insurance if we're following policy and procedure like we should be, and it'll bring in line with the training to follow the policies. And they do follow up. You have 3 years to bring it in place, and they come in and they do a standards check to make sure you're in compliance, and then every year you'll have to follow up with another compliance check.
Apart from providing some liability protection, does it also contribute when we are in the process of applying for different types of grants? Is this something that they see as a plus?
Yes, actually, there's a big push for all agencies that are applying for grants to be on some type of international accreditation.
And as far as our other area, just sheriff's departments, how are the other counties neighboring? Do you know if they are participating? Platte, Jackson?
Platte County has just started their program, and there are several in the state of Missouri, but we'll probably be about the 4th sheriff's office in the state to be doing this. Right. Highway Patrol is internationally accredited through CALEA. Yes, in Gladstone, I apologize, yes.
Are there any questions from the commissioners?
No questions other than it sounds like a fantastic idea, good for the citizens of the county as well as you mentioned, for protecting liability purposes with the sheriff's office. So thank you for doing it.
Commissioner Thompson?
No questions, thank you. But no, I think this is going to be a great opportunity for Clay County, and I'm excited to move forward with it.
Thank you.
It is awfully good to see Clay County leading the way in some very positive manner throughout the state. So that's certainly something we're all very pleased to see. Any further comments or questions? I'm kind of inclined to put this on regular agenda, not only because it does have the expenditure of money, but to tell you the truth, I'd kind of like to have another opportunity to brag about our sheriff's department. Is that good with everybody?
Sounds good to me. Thanks.
Thank you. That brings us to 2021-299. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-299 is a request to approve an agreement with the National Institute for Jail Operations, and Captain Agdarian will make additional comments about this.
Captain, when you're ready.
Captain Amy Agdarian, Clay County Sheriff's Office. This is, as I explained previously, the umbrella accreditation for the whole Sheriff's Office. This NIJO contract is a similar process, only it is specific to our detention center. And there are actually two pieces to this agreement contract. You have the accreditation process with NIJO, but there is also a training component called Dakota, all acronyms, but Dakota is the online training partner with NIJO that allows for additional detention-specific training for our detention personnel, with tracks that allow for leadership training specific to a corrections facility, which is wonderful not only for our commissioned personnel working in detention, but for those non-commissioned personnel or our civilian detention officers to have an opportunity to increase their training and their professional opportunities. And with me here today is Captain Ray Franks, who is the division commander of the detention center. If you have any additional questions, and this is a project he's been working on a lot, very time-consuming process for him. So.
Apart from the observation that we had about the last one as it relates to liability and our ability to obtain grants, it seems to me also that this is something that gives us an opportunity to either have greater access to training for our personnel or even access to somewhat unique training that would not be accessible to our staff otherwise. Is that correct?
You can come on up. That is correct. And one thing that I wanted to say about both of these opportunities is that it not only allows us access to those resources from the accrediting agency, but also allows us to be, to have a light shine on us and our processes and allow that transparency, which you have heard me say more than once, but I firmly believe that we need to be people need to know what we're doing. They need to know about these processes where it's appropriate, but it allows a light into what we're doing so that we can be accountable to you and to the citizens. And I'll let Captain Franks say a little bit more about this.
Thank you.
Captain Ray Franks, Clay County Detention Center Division Commander. NIJO is a system set in place. Currently, there's only one other jail in the entire state of Missouri that has successfully completed the NIJO process. We're only the second to even try the process. It is a difficult process. We have 36 months once the agreement is signed upon. It's not just about these processes and getting them in place. Talking with former Captain Keith Hoskins, who actually did the NIJO process for Boone County, they said once they found out that NIJO was accepted, they were inspected and found to be following and have in place legal policies. What they now found was that they can't get lawyers to take any case from the jail as far away as Chicago. Local attorneys will not touch their county anymore because they are an accredited facility. So that's why they come back every 24 months. They come back and make sure that we are still following the legal processes that we put in place, that we are still following so we maintain our accreditation. And not only is it for the facility as a whole, they also have a process where the individual employees can become accredited as well. Frontline employees, supervisors, and executive. I'm going through the executive process now. It's 115 hours and 36 months of training. But it must be legal-based training that they have to approve over a wide variety of areas, which they do for everybody. It's a very legal-based training system as opposed to watch a video, get a CEU. You must score 100% on everything. They want you to know it. It's a great program. Keith Hoskin, again, he's been kind of my mentor. He's somebody I can reach out to when I have questions. It's just a great program that I would love to see put in place. Thank you.
One other thing I wanted to say was, as I'm hearing my own words and hearing Captain Franks say, that it protects us against liability, let me assure you, we're still going to. And I have to say that because I worked with Jason Davey, legal counsel, to go over these contracts with a fine-tooth comb, and we made some changes, and asked for some clarification on things, and he assures me that, nothing is going to be 100% effective against a lawsuit, okay? However, this does give us additional coverage and additional resources to make sure that our people have the most up-to-date training.
Are there any questions or comments from the other commissioners?
No questions, thank you. But I think any additional education and training is always wonderful. And of course, our Sheriff's Department on all aspects are on top of that. So thank you so much.
Just wanted similar comments to the previous item, which is thank you for doing this. I mean, obviously, it's going to be good for the operations of the facility, as well as any protections that we can have against lawsuits. Both by having the accreditation that demonstrates that our folks are up to date and knowledgeable, but also presumably by reducing the likelihood of incidents to happen that would lead to lawsuits. So I think it makes a tremendous amount of sense, and my sincere thanks to both of you for making it happen.
Thank you. That's something I wanted to say before it got lost in the shuffle, and that's that this is also a benefit for those who are in custody, those that we have in our jail facility, because this is going to result in a safer jail, not just for our deputies, but also for those who are in custody. And I hasten to mention that those who we might be holding who have not yet been brought to trial are in fact, by constitutional definition, innocent until proven guilty. So certainly we want to make sure that the way we treat those who are in the custody of the county is humane and secure, not just for them, but also securing our citizens. So appreciate this. With that, I think that would also be appropriate for regular. Is that consistent with everyone else? Very good. Thank you. That brings us to 2021 Ordinance 34, I believe, Mr. Administrator.
Correct. Commissioners, 2021 Ordinance 34 is a request to reappropriate and revise the adopted budget for current year from the Highways and Bridges, and Deputy Administrator Walters is here for additional comment.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commission, Deputy Administration. Carl Walters here with 2021 Ordinance 34, the budget of $203,200 in sales tax and use tax, $408.20. We would increase the balance of $52,000 for the line item of $301,820, $335, and $151,200 on the line item $301,820, $340 for the $52 would be for the salt and sand for the end of the year, and then the other, the $151,000 would help us complete some of our maintenance, patching and stuff and road repair that we have out in the county right now.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the commissioners?
No, thank you.
Okay. Once again, a regular agenda, is that good for everybody?
Yeah, I think so. Thanks.
Very good. That brings us to 2021-296.
Commissioners, 2021-296 is a request to approve an aviation projects consultant agreement with Burns and McDonnell. This is related to a MoDOT project having to do with the airport runway, and Deputy Administrator Walters is here for additional comments.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon again, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy Director of Administration for Clay County. These are funds that we are moving from 401, 915, and 920 into the consulting 401, 920 area to have $266,525 for consulting of the what we had talked about earlier on the core bore geology and the topo of the runway, so that they can turn around and determine how much rehabilitation we have to do to that runway and the cracks and stuff and the soil compaction underneath that asphalt.
So once we get this report completed, we can kind of put our arms around what is required for the reasonable maintenance of the runway.
Right, and then they'll turn around, take that, send that to MoDOT. Their design will go to MoDOT, and then MoDOT will research it. We'll go looking for a contractor. They'll turn around and send that to FAA to get the approval and move on from that in the year of 2022.
And do I understand MoDOT is taking some of the cost on this?
Yes, actually, it's a 90-10 on the cost on this, so it's actually going to be very good. And there's some AIP discretionary funds that we'll have for this that'll also pay for on this, as well as in the 2018, 19, and the 20 as well. They'll pull some funds from that as well.
Are there any questions or comments from the commission?
No questions. I mean, I think we had begun this discussion previously, and I think it's fantastic. You know, obviously, anytime we can get 90% funded is a great opportunity for the county. So thanks for making that happen.
No questions, thank you.
Very good. With that, we will put 2021-296. Would that be regular agenda?
I think so. Yeah. Thanks.
Very good. That brings us to 2021-297. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-297 is a request to approve an aviation support and maintenance services agreement, and this is with DBT Transportation Services, and again, Deputy Administrator Walters will make additional comment.
Please proceed.
Good afternoon, Commission. Carl Walters, Deputy Director of Administrations of Clay County. This is DBT is the WAS weather station that we have out there. DBT Transportation actually maintains it at this point right now. The fellow that maintained it before had passed away, and he was certified to do that, so DBT Transportation says came in, turn around, they're certified to do it. The FAA will only let certified people take care of that weather station, and what it does is give the on-time weather for the reports for the pilots as they fly in, fly out. And it's in the discretionary fund, 401-920, 330 of $5,665.
Okay. Are there any questions from the commission or comments?
No, thank you.
I appreciate you making sure that this happens. Certainly, you know, weather is one of the most hazardous
Yep.
parts of flying, and taking off and landing are certainly one of the more dangerous propositions when you're involved
Yeah.
in aviating.
We don't need any accidents out there.
No, I think we've got a good record. We need to keep it. So 2021 on the regular agenda for next week?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be fine with consent on this one, but whatever you want to do is good with me, certainly.
That brings us to 2021-287. Mr. Administrator? Oh, we did agree on regular, did we not?
Regular's fine, if that's what you prefer, sure.
Because it, I mean, it doesn't spend, there is some money being changed. Yes, Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-287 is a request to approve an intergovernmental agreement with Mid-America Regional Council, MARC, Solid Waste Management District for Regional Household Hazardous Waste Collection Program, something that happens annually, and Deputy Administrator Kuntz is here for additional comment.
Please proceed.
Donna Kuntz, Deputy County Administrator, Facilities. Yes, Commissioners, as our County Administrator just stated, this is an annual agreement that we come before you asking. This allows for our unincorporated Clay County citizens to legally have a format to dispose of household hazardous waste. This is based upon $1.09 per capita from the 2020 census. The total amount for this for the 2022 year is $18,074.38 that we're asking for you to approve. And on a somewhat side note, for this year, in our 2021, it just happens that Clay County is partnering with Kearney on November the 13th on a Saturday at the Mac Porter Park from 8 to noon to hold our household hazardous waste collection for this year.
That's very good. Yeah, this is obviously something we've been doing for some time.
Yes, since 1997.
That would be some time. Are there any questions or comments from the commission? Very well. Once again, I'm inclined to have it on regular. Is that
Sounds good.
good with everybody? Very well. 2021-287 will be on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2021-290. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-290 is a request to approve ARPA funding for the Crows Creek Lagoon Maintenance and Improvements Project at Smithfield Lake. This is a request from Parks, and Deputy Parks Manager Davis is here for additional comments.
Please proceed.
John Davis, Deputy Director, Clay County Parks. This request is for maintenance improvement of the Crows Creek campgrounds. It's roughly 40-year-old, the Crows Creek Campground Lagoon. It's roughly a 40-year-old facility designed probably 25 to 30 years. It's reached its capacity, especially with increased numbers of visitors to the parks due to COVID and throughout the years. $986,121 request. The project would include dredging the lagoon system and rip-wrapping the shore, putting rock liner in the retention ponds, and fixing the dam structure that holds it up, also adding an electrical pump system for irrigation to keep the system operating.
It's my understanding that this is indeed compliant with the ARPA regulations as it deals with wastewater and that sort of thing. So it sounds to me, unless somebody has any other information, that this falls very squarely in the qualified use of these funds. And it certainly is something that we need to be doing. As you say, given the age and the usage of the facility, it certainly is in line that we should be doing this right now. Any questions or comments from the commission?
Yes,
Please
please. Thank you.
proceed.
So one question I have is, if the ARPA funds hadn't come through, what had been the plan for funding this?
Continuing to Band-Aid it as much as we can and try to get it through normal budget.
And we're talking, can you give me the amount again?
986,000.
196. All right. And what would Band-Aiding look like if we were to not approve these dollars?
Well, I guess I'll rephrase that, pretty much going until it fails is basically all we can do.
I'm sorry, could you speak just more loudly, please?
Basically going until it fails, and I'll rephrase that. It's a 5 million gallon facility. It's divided up into 3 ponds. First pond holds 2 million gallons worth of raw sewage. Second pond, water flows over into that. It's less of raw sewage. The third pond is your kind of clean water. It's sewer water still, but that's what's supposed to evaporate, or we use it, we irrigate. That's the only way we can get the water level down in that pond. When they were built 40 years ago, they're supposed to retain have 7 feet of capacity. We're probably into 4 to the 5 foot range now. So we would keep going as whatever we could do, but there's also control valves between each ponds that regulate the flow of water. They no longer work. So we're probably at our last leg. Honestly.
Gotcha, thank you. And in terms of the 980,000, was that number did we already have that, an idea of that number before the ARPA funds, or has this been pursued only in light of the ARPA funds?
We looked back with it in 2019, had Burns and McDonald form a plan, and this is the updated of what we got with costs
Gotcha.
from that
Okay.
plan.
Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson, did you have any questions or comments?
I do, thank you.
Before you start, did the Deputy Administrator have a clarification for the last response, or are you ready for Commissioner?
For Commissioner Carpenter.
Okay, and this is in response to Commissioner Carpenter's inquiry.
Yes. Donna Kuntz, Deputy County Administrator. I just want to further expand on John Davis's comment in that in 2018, and the reason I've asked our Deputy Park Director to speak to this is that I have not been here for the entire time of this project. So I felt like he was much more qualified to address all of the questions that would probably come up. One of the things when they hired back in 2018, in anticipation of the aging of our system, Burns and McDonald came in and worked with MDNR, worked with the permitting structure we have to have, developed the plan for us in anticipation that we were going to kick this off and do something, of course, approximately a year ago. One of the things I do want to point out, and I'm going to turn and ask for some of John's input on this too, is that due to heavy rains and stuff that we had last year, they had to reach out and get some emergency permits to release some of the water and get the water out because we were at overflow capacity. Part of what's built into this project is a lift station so that we have a way to control between the 3 lagoons to manage the level ourselves and not reach a critical emergency permit to discharge from these lagoons. And please expand on if I'm not explaining this exactly.
You're correct.
Commissioner Rutt, before, did you have any
No,
follow-up?
just
Does that take care of your?
thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Commissioner Commissioner Thompson, please proceed.
Thank you. My question is, so the funds here allocated for this project, would this be reoccurring? When do we think that this would come up again? Is this like an every year, every 5 years? Like, how long would this fix? Is it fix it for a while? Like, what are we looking at?
We're hoping that this would fix it for the next 20 to 30 years. It's, like I say, it's been estimated 40 years old. They're only supposed to last 20 to 30. We're hoping to get that, with this improvement, get that out of it again.
Okay, so we wouldn't have to see this again for another 20 years then?
I would hope not.
Okay, ideally. Okay.
One further, Donna Kuntz, Deputy County Administrator, one further comment to answer your question. The number has built into it, it's how we reached the 900,000 here, a 10% contingency fund, knowing that by the time that we address this through the commission, this is a weather-dependent project as to when we can go in and stabilize the shorelines, when we can dig, when we can drain the lagoons. So there is a 10% higher factor, contingency factor in this to account for higher materials and any delays.
Okay.
Thank you for that clarification. That does help to know that there's a contingency built in so that if we do run into some literally heavy weather, that we have the ability to not need to go back and get more money necessarily, or at least that's the hope. Commissioner Thompson, did you have any other questions or comments?
That was all for now, thank you.
Okay. Are there any further comments from the commission or questions? 2021-290, once again regular. I feel like everything's on regular today, but it just is kind of one of those meetings. Mr. Administrator, that brings us to 2021-288. Please proceed.
Commissioners, 2021-288 is a request to approve the use of ARPA funds to expend expired Families First Coronavirus Response Act benefits. This is a request of Human Resources, and Human Resources Manager Callahan is here for additional comments.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kim Callahan, Clay County Human Resources Manager. This is just to enact the American Rescue Plan Act to continue to pay our employees when they have COVID or they have to quarantine, or actually they have symptoms and have to test and await the results of the test.
Very good. Once again, I would point out that, in my opinion at least, this is certainly falls within the requirements of expending ARPA funds. But I'd like to expand on that for just a moment to say that this isn't something that we take lightly here at the county, that our administrator, our county auditor, and many others in county government are going through these expenses and trying, giving it a very great effort to make sure that anything that by the time it comes before us, we have a high degree of confidence that this is indeed within the ARPA requirements. And in fact, we would probably not bring it up until we were very satisfied that this was in fact a qualified expense that we could expend. So I say that not for necessarily the sake of my fellow commissioners certainly are aware of that, but just so that the public understands the work that has gone in up front, even on some of the most, in my opinion, obvious qualified expenses. We are making sure that we are doing our due diligence in expending these funds.
Absolutely.
Is there anything from any of the other commissioners?
No, I just thank you for doing it, and to our county administrator as well. I think this is a totally necessary thing to extend forward. Obviously, we're still looking at the potential of future county employees facing sickness with COVID, and so having a plan in place to help them get through that makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Commissioner Thompson, did you have anything you'd like to add?
No questions, and I would agree with my fellow commissioners, and I think this is the right thing to do.
Mr. Presiding, just a comment.
Yes, Mr. Administrator, please proceed.
I'll expand only slightly. Ms. Callahan did a great job of explaining this. This program expired in September and was part of the CARES Act. And at that time, she approached me and made that point and suggested that we give some consideration to a way to carry this forward. And the way this had worked was anybody that had to leave employment because of either quarantining or the virus themselves, we of course paid them while they were absent from work, and then we got a credit back from the CARES Act for those same expenses. So what we've done, and this, as you can see in your documentation, we've now taken this from October 1 this year and have built this to carry forward until December 31st of next year. In the same vein, when people have to leave employment because of the virus or quarantining, they will be paid, and then we'll use these ARPA funds to restore that loss of revenue, or pay, I should say, during that time. So that it's a kind of a one-on-one replacement.
Well, certainly appreciate the fact that it's always, when you have multiple programs, particularly when they come from the federal government, sometimes they're a little more complicated than perhaps necessary. But I think we all appreciate the fact that you are able to work through these and seamlessly put them together so that there is no break in the ability for us to make sure that our employees are treated well and that they are reimbursed, and that the county is, of course, able to access those funds to do so. Anything from either of the commissioners? I'm thinking this is more just a procedural thing. This does not require the expenditure of immediate expenditure of funds. Does anybody have a problem with this being on consent?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with that.
It's just been so long since we had a consent issue. We just had to come up with something. Very well. 2021-288 will appear on next week's consent agenda. That brings us to 2021-289. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioner, 21-289 is a request to improve the employee benefits plan for the 2022 plan year. This was done in conjunction with Gary and Associates, our insurance broker, and Human Resources Manager Callahan is here for additional comments.
Please proceed.
Okay, Kim Callahan, Human Resources Manager. After meeting with our broker, Josh Gary, it was decided to stay with Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay, and after long discussions with the commissioners, it was decided not to pass any premium increase onto the employees. And the county will be picking up the increase in its entirety.
And that increase will be roughly $1.2 million.
That is correct.
Any questions or comments from the commission? Mr. Carpenter?
No questions, no.
Commissioner Thompson?
No questions, thank you.
I just want to, you had mentioned it, but I do want to expound on the fact that this was done with a lot of thought and a lot of discussion for all concerned. This was not a decision that was made either quickly or without consulting a broad number of people. There was, and there was some, quite honestly, there was some, disagreement might be a too strong a word, but there were certainly variances of views. I think that something that we see now in county government that I certainly appreciate is people can be at variance with their views, and yet we come out at the end of the process with a solution that everybody can live with. So certainly appreciate your hard work and the hard work of all involved.
Thank you.
With that, I think I would recommend this being on regular agenda. Also, I believe that we will be hearing from the insurance provider next week, so this
Next
will
week he'll
allow
be
us
here,
to hear more discussion and forward any questions that we or someone else may have.
Perfect, thank you.
Commissioner Thompson, are you good with that?
I'm fine with that.
Very good. So we will put 2021-289 on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2021-286. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021-286, a request to approve an engagement letter initiated with Stiefel Nicholas and Company for consulting services relating to our implementation of the American Rescue Plan Act throughout the county government. This is a request from administration. The Stiefel Nicholas came and made a presentation to us as the administration with some thoughts on how they might be able to assist us in proper implementation of the American Rescue Plan. They made an offer related to their costs, and we think that's the pricing is good and appropriate, and request that they be engaged to do just what we asked them to do.
Are there any comments from the representatives of the company, of the vendor? Very good. I think this is a great thing to be doing. This is certainly something that I think is certainly helpful for the county. I just made reference to the fact that our staff and the county auditor and everyone else has been working very hard to make sure that when an issue related to these funds reaches the commission, it's been properly vetted to make sure that it is compliant. There are undoubtedly going to be situations as we become as we get deeper into this issue, where there may not be the obvious things that we have just been dealing with earlier in this meeting. I think it is helpful, and I think it shows the commission exercising its due diligence to have on call the help of this Stiefel Nichols company, because we need to make sure that when we do expend these funds, we are doing it in a compliant manner. And I think the expertise that is brought to the table by the vendor is going to be something that we will find, especially as we go deeper into it, incredibly valuable. The fact that they are on an on-call sort of an arrangement means that we will be accruing a fee only when we've gotten to a point where we need to depend upon their advice for some of the finer details of this particular program. With that, are there any comments or questions from the commission?
No, thank you.
No, just to echo what you just say, it's been great to work with Stiefel and Company in terms of working on the certificate of participation process and getting us out of some of the debt that the previous commission had locked us into. And I'm looking forward to having this assistance in terms of ARPA funds. And I think the way the contract is set up makes a lot of sense, which is essentially to pay on a per item basis. I don't think we really know at this exact moment how much we're going to utilize their services going forward, but to have the contract ready to go and makes a lot of sense to me. So, thank you.
I think that's a very good point that Commissioner Carpenter makes, and that is we are, and it's an overly used word, I guess, since we've been in the era of COVID, but we are certainly in uncharted waters as here. So you're right, having the contract written in the way that it's written gives us the maximum flexibility to use them or to depend upon our own resources as we see fit going forward, and therefore keep the cost to the taxpayers at where it should appropriately be. With that, if there's no further comment, 2021-286, is that, yes. No, excuse me,
That's it.
yeah, I do have the right one, I apologize, too many papers. I would recommend that go on regular, is that
Sure.
work for everybody?
That's fine.
Very good. 2021-286 would appear on next week's regular agenda. That brings us to 2021 Ordinance 41, Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021 Ordinance 41 is to approve the renewal of an ordinance authorizing the issue of amusement and recreation licenses to various entities that ask for an opportunity to do things on county grounds. This is a function of the commission. It is largely ministerial, but it's something that we need to renew so that we can have this in place for any further requests.
Thank you. Are there any, because as you say, this is an annual exercise that we go through, are there any variations from last year's ordinance? Perhaps that would be a question for the clerk.
None.
So the only change is, just to repeat that, the only changes that appear from last year is just the obvious change of dates for effective days that we go through. So with that, are there any comments or questions from the commissioners?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
I could go either way, regular or consent. I think consent would probably work. I don't see this as being controversial in nature since there are no changes, but I want to make sure I point that out before we go forward. It has been in the past controversial, but in this particular time, I don't think it is. Is everyone good with consent?
Good with me.
That's fine.
Very good. 2021 Ordinance 41 will appear on next week's consent agenda. That brings us to 2021 Ordinance 43. Mr. Administrator.
Commissioners, 2021 Ordinance 43 is an ordinance authorizing the County of Clay, Missouri, to issue certificates of participation in a named Series 2021B and authorizing and approving certain documents and actions by the county related to that. This is an action of the commission, and it involves our relationship with Stiefel Nicholas and Company. I'll give you back the floor, and the representatives of Stiefel here are obviously here for comments based on how they might be approached.
Thank you. Please proceed when you're ready.
Sure thing. Good afternoon. Michael Short with Stiefel Nicholas, here with my colleague Connor Swanson, as well as Megan Miller from the county's bond counsel firm Gilmore and Bell. This is a follow-on to the last financing you did, which refunded the Series 2018 bonds. We now refer to that as Series 2021A. And as you recall, as a part of that refinancing, which saved the county a lot of money, lowered debt, et cetera, we captured all the unspent project funds and swept all that away. And we contemplated at the time that you might need to do a new money issue to still finish some of the projects that were contemplated in the 18 deal that got started, that you in fact have contracts out on, and that you now need to pay for. And that's what we're doing today. And you'll be doing this financing at rates that are less than half of what the original financing was done for in 18, so it's very positive for the county. It's right now we're standing at a issuance amount of about $5.4 million. That generates a $6.1 million project fund, which is what you will need in our consultations with the auditor and the administrator to finish out some bridge projects and some HVAC work to this building. We do that because these bonds are estimated to generate a premium, meaning that in the market we sell those bonds at a bit of a premium because they're highly desired by investors, and so that helps out. That's why you generate that kind of money more than the face value of the bond. So we anticipate a true interest cost on these bonds of about 1.36% over the 10-year maturity of the bond, so pretty low cost of money for the county. And it is amortized over 10 years, consistent with the refunding deal we just did, so they'll go hand in hand. We anticipate, subject to your action next Wednesday night, formally approving it, that would then move into the market as early as the next week, the week of November the 1st, to sell these and get that money in place so that the auditor can certify payment to some of the people that need to be paid for your bridge projects. Happy to answer any other questions you might have.
Very good. Do you have any questions for the representative?
I don't, thank you.
Sure. Commissioner?
No questions. No, thank you.
No, we appreciate that, and I think we have moved from a situation that was somewhat problematic to one where I think we are, I think the taxpayers are much advantaged by this. Like I say, as you pointed out, these funds are going to be used for bridge work, which is desperately needed, and I know the Deputy Administrator Carl is going to be very happy to see this thing being in place. I think it's worth noting, just for anyone who has any questions, this has zero impact on anything to do with, there is no annex involved in this. It is completely roads and, bridges and the other repair work that we talked about.
Capital improvement projects,
Very good. Yes,
transportation related, except for the HVAC to this building.
exactly.
Yeah, which is a small piece of it.
Very good. With that, are there any questions or comments beyond that?
No, other than I think this is necessary. Obviously the previous commission got us into some unnecessary debt. I think it's been a pleasure to work with the two of you and with the administration and getting us out of a lot of that, as well as with the Stiefel team. And obviously we had a few of those projects that got us locked into in terms of the funding mechanism that we've got to pay for. But I think this makes a tremendous amount of sense, and look forward to moving it forward next week.
Just on a personal note, working through this process with two commissioners who have been so engaged and so reasonable is something I absolutely appreciate, and thank you very much for taking on a rather difficult and somewhat complicated issue and bringing us through to, I think, what is going to be a very positive conclusion. With that, I would recommend 2021 Ordinance 43 be on next week's regular agenda. Is that
Yes.
good with everybody? That brings us to the conclusion, excuse me, of today's regular agenda. Is there a motion related to the items we have just taken up?
Commissioner, I move that the following items be placed on next Wednesday, 6 p.m.'s consent agenda. Those items are 2021-288 and 2021 Ordinance 41. And then all of the remaining items on next week's regular agenda.
Thank you. Motion has been made for the placement of the items as listed to be on next week's regular and consent agenda. Those tally with my notes as well. Are there any comments, Commissioner Thompson?
No, thank you.
Are there any comments from anybody in the public? Seeing none, please call the roll. Oh, excuse me, you were recognized to close, Commissioner Carpenter.
Hi, close.
Please call the roll.
Yes.
Yes?
That brings us to comments on non-agenda items. Are there any members of the public here who would like to comment on any items not on this evening's agenda? Seeing none. I believe there's at least one office holder who would like to comment on an item not on this evening or this afternoon's agenda. Mr. Auditor, when you are prepared, please proceed.
Thank you, Commissioner Nolte. Yes, this is Clay County Auditor Victor Hurlbert. I just want to briefly go over something on a non-agenda item. We just got the final 2020 audit for our financial statements, our independent external audit yesterday. And so that's why, rather than being a discussion item, we have this as a non-agenda item. It should be in written reports as I've delivered to the clerk. We'll be getting the bound hard copies momentarily, and those will be distributed to all of you. But just to briefly go over kind of high level the results of that audit, which is in your submission as well. Essentially, I gotta say, I think we should be very appreciative of our outside auditors, Cochran Head and Vick. They've completed 3 external audits for us in 1 year, when typically they only do 1. And they've helped us, retain our eligibility for federal grants, as well as assist the county with turning a lot of things around. So we're appreciative to them. And to quickly review the 2020 financial statements, I'd turn your attention to the official single audit report, and I would just note on page 4 and 5 that overall in a financial statement rating system, this is essentially the best rating you can get. It's an unmodified opinion. What that means is, according to government accounting standards, these financial statements are presented fairly, so they're unmodified. And we've always had unmodified opinions. We've never really had an adverse or modified opinion in that respect for our financial statements as well as for our federal awards. So that's, great news. But I will say something that's really different about this year's audit is that we had no findings for our financial statements or for our federal awards. And we went back in our records, and that's been something about near a decade since we've had that. And so I just want to thank my team. We worked really hard to get us to that place. And it's just an exciting day, and I think there's only more work to be done in next year's audit. I want us to get us to that, like we heard from the Sheriff's Office, we want to get to kind of those national standards of our peer groups. We joined the Government Finance Officers Association, and we want to have what's called a popular annual financial report and continue to progress on that. So that's really the main thing from the single audit report. The financial statements are what they are. I do want to briefly comment on some unofficial comments that our outside auditors made to us, because I think we need to be transparent, and I just want to, it's the reality that any good auditor is going to have ideas for us to improve. So let's discuss those briefly, and those are in your transmittal. They really, in my estimation, all dealt with the 2020 budget, and so those are easily correctable items. And so, first of all, we have a fund called the Law Library Fund. It is in statutes to be under the control of the circuit court, the presiding judge, and have a separate bank account. So not really be part of our accounting system, not have any approval necessary other than the presiding judge. So it's hard to budget that fund. The transactions don't occur in our accounting system. They get booked separately by looking at their bank statements. So ultimately, what they recommended is when we made those entries, it went above the budget of 2020. So I will say that, we will have that corrected into 2021 if we need to come for a reappropriation. And I think an easy thing to do, it's hard to estimate the revenues on this fund because it's based on court activity, so it's unpredictable. But we can just put in an extra fluff based on trends. And so we've already put that into the department, into the request for 2022 budget. I don't see an issue with that. Another discretionary fund they mentioned was the collector TMF. Again, a discretionary fund, and we had over budget accounting entries. We already, in my estimation, have fixed that in this year's budget because we budgeted the revenues from the agreements we have with entities for collection of their taxes and the commissions the TMF gets from those. So by doing that, there's more budget available in the fund. We won't have over budget situations. So second, another discretionary fund, the sheriff inmate fund, by statute in control of the sheriff. Ultimately, it only serves to serve inmate actual costs, and anything above that gets sent back to county treasury in our inmate security fund. Well, so essentially that wasn't in the 2020 budget. With the assistance of our outside auditors, we put that in our 2021 budget to budget that expenditure back to the county. And so we believe we're on course for that to be fixed in 2021. But again, we're going to keep track of this before year end because it's unreasonable for me to come to you in the new year and ask you to fix the previous year's budget. I don't think I really have authorization to do that either. So those are really the discretionary fund issues. Again, not large amounts and nothing really affecting the financial statements or the single audit itself. No, it's not a finding. The debt service fund, they did mention how we transfer budget as payments get made, but the reconciliation wasn't done monthly. It was done annually for the previous years. We're now doing that monthly, so the budget will keep pace. And so, again, I think that is already fixed for 2021. And then finally, they made a recommendation, or a comment, I should say, well, a couple more comments. One is the County Road and Bridge Fund. In the 2020 budget, there was a budgeted revenue amount for grants that just did not occur because of a lack of bid on projects. And so the problem is those monies still got spent despite that revenue not coming in, hence you have a decreasing fund balance. So they said, watch that. I would say in the 2021 budget, we didn't do that. So we've closely monitored it, and we're going to, working with the Highway Department, make sure also going forward, not just in 2021, but in future years, continue that in that manner. Finally, cybersecurity. This was kind of the outside auditors mentioned to us that this was a recommendation they're making to all their clients. It's something we all need to pay attention to, and the state auditor has made mentions of this for the entire state, that good practices we can all take to make sure, because it's a reality of attempted cyber attacks, attempted hacking, and what procedures and protocols can we have in place. And so they just wanted to bring that attention, not because of anything specific to Clay County, but just as a good practice overall. And then finally, they mentioned how last year's issues about making sure we were ready for the audit has already been corrected. They did want to make sure we continue to follow when we make selection committees for procurement, that we have the right number of people and do that correctly. And that's been fixed in this year, of course. And just continue to follow accounting standards, which we do now. So that's really all I have. Kind of high level, like I said, but I wanted to just make you aware of that. And we'll begin the 2021 audit in a couple months. So, all right.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the volume of information that you provided to us, and certainly we will be looking through that. But thank you very much for the work that you were doing in the comments. Are there any other office holders who would like to make comments on any items not on today's agenda? Seeing none. Are there any agencies who would like to make comments on any items not appearing on today's agenda? Seeing none. Mr. Administrator, do you have any comments you'd care to make at this time?
None right now, thank you.
Very good. Well, that brings us to Commissioner comments. Commissioner Thompson, do you have any comments that you would like to make?
I don't, thank you.
Commissioner Carpenter, do you have any comments you would like to make?
I just actually want to briefly thank Auditor Hobart for all of his work and for the presentation. And I know it's, especially in the last year or two here, been maybe a little extra burdensome, and I am grateful that you're in the role doing that work. So thank you.
Very good. Just two things. I would like to observe that the volume of work that we went through this evening demonstrates the quality and the dedication of staff, both those who are in elective office and those who are administrative staff. I think what we've seen tonight today is a volume of information, a volume of work that is a credit to where the county is working now. Certainly appreciate the hard work of all involved because it's very much a team effort. Secondarily, and I will keep saying this because it's rather broken record time for me, but I want to make sure that everyone who has the ability to do so cast their vote on November 2nd. Please make sure that you are informed about the issues and that you do cast your vote. There are a number of local issues that are out there. One I think that touches most on this body is the renewal of the sheriff's sales tax revenue. That is something that is absolutely vital to the running of that department. Certainly we are all very supportive of our sheriff's department, the deputies, and law enforcement in general. I would urge all citizens to research this issue and to make every effort to go to the polls this November 2nd. The challenge is that there are not many items that are broad in nature that are countywide. Therefore, this is an easy election to kind of slip underneath the radar. Once again, citizens should exercise what is not only their right but their responsibility to vote at the opportunities afforded on Election Day. So please get out, get your research done, understand what you're voting on, and cast your vote in an informed manner. That brings us to approval of the minutes. We have two meeting minutes to be approved, one from September 22, 2021, 2 p.m., and another from September 29, 2021, 4 p.m. Is there a motion related to approval of the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the September 22nd, 2 p.m., and the September 29th, 4 p.m. meeting minutes as printed.
Motion's been made for the approval of the September of the minutes. Please, are there any discussion?
No discussion.
Seeing none, you're recognized to close.
I close.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yes?
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Did she just, that was just one set or was that both sets?
It was both.
I thought it was both sets. It went so quickly. Written reports, are there any written reports to be presented to the commission at this time? That brings us to, we are noticed up for executive session under legal, Missouri Statute 610.021, parentheses 2, real estate, parentheses 1, real estate, parentheses 2, personnel, parentheses 3, and contractual, parentheses 12. It is my understanding that all commissioners have been informed of the general subject matter that we will be addressing, and in my estimation, they all are certainly applicable under Sunshine Law to be in executive session. Is there a motion related to our executive sessions?
I move that we move into executive session and adjourn therefrom.
Motion has been made for us to move into executive session under the 4 items listed on our agenda today. Discussion, Commissioner Thompson?
No, none. Thank you.
Any comments from the public? Seeing none, please call, you're recognized to renew your motion.
I renew my motion.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Carpenter?
Yes.
Yes.
Therefore, we will go into executive session and adjourn therefrom. Thank you very much.